Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to Being Conscious. In continuation with our series of videos, which we started a couple of days back on the Untethered Soul by Michael A. Singer, today's video will talk about another chapter in this phenomenal book. Now, this video is going to be instrumental in this whole concept of awakening consciousness. In this context, Michael quotes Ramana Maharshi, the great saint who introduced the concept of self-inquiry. Now, if you are viewing this channel, probably Ramana Maharshi is a known name for you. But for those who don't, Ramana Maharshi is one of those powerful saints this planet who had come in this planet, who was so powerful that he didn't really need to market himself a lot. His aura and presence was so powerful that it magnetized people not only from the country he belonged to, but from across the globe. Now, what did he talk about? He didn't talk about any fancy techniques or any fancy jugglery which is happening in the market today in the spiritual community. He gave a very simple question to ask, and that question might seem quite simple and might not have a lot of sophistication. And we might think, what kind of a question is this? The question is as simple as asking yourself, who are you? Who am I? That is the base of self-inquiry. Now, before you start to think that this seems to be a nonsensical question, of course I know who I am. What does this question mean? What does Ramana mean? Allow me to break this down for you. But before that, we would have to do a certain experiment. We would have to ask ourselves certain exploratory questions. Now, suppose someone asks me, who am I? And let's say I'm the great Thomas Alva Edison. How would I answer that question? If someone asked me, who are you? I would say that I am Thomas Alva Edison. I was sort of kicked out of my school because I had a learning disability, and I was home tutored all across my life. And later on, I became this person who had so many failures, but despite those failures, I was able to create a lot of inventions. And I founded that conglomerate, the industrial conglomerate, which is going to be known for probably millenniums, General Electric. Now, this would be the standard definition if someone asks Thomas Alva Edison, who are you? But now, here comes the vantage point, here comes the crucial point. Now, all this which this person talked about, right, in our example, Mr. Thomas Alva Edison, he spoke about what had happened with them or what he achieved during the course of his life. But did he answer the core question, the central question? Who are you or who am I? Probably most of us are not accustomed to think in this paradigm. Also, if you closely observe, you define yourself based on the experiences you have had in your life till now, good and bad. Maybe you have graduated from a certain institute. Maybe you achieved certain milestones in the career and the personal front. And your identity is closely tied with those events. But if I ask you this question, now you might contemplate and realize that you're right. These things are some things which happened with me. This is not me. Then what would the answer from your side be? Now, if I ask you this, you would probably come down to your physical dimensions. My weight is 85, my height is 6'1", I am this and this age, I come from this community. But again, if I ask you this question, 10 or 15 years back, your weight and height were different? Does that mean you were not present at that point of time? Certainly not. So what does that mean? That means even your physical identity is bound to change. Are you saying that you were not there 10, 15, 20 years back when your dimensions were different? Certainly not. Now, we are going to the core, we are reaching to the core intent behind Ramana's ask. The core intent really is, when you talk about the external world, in the first two videos, we have emphasized a lot about the subject-object relationship as to how we can clearly understand that there is a subject-object relationship between the external world and us. Now we are moving a step ahead. Now we are moving another step where we have clearly understood about this distinction, but now we need to go to the inner dimensions. Now we go inside the inner dimensions and you see the first inner dimension is the physical body. And now we realize that the physical body is also subject to change. You and me are not going to look the same way 10 or 15 years from now. Nor did we look the same way 10 or 15 years back. So that means we are not even the physical body. Then are we our thoughts, our mind? Certainly not. You might be having a great day at one point of time, and the same evening of that day, you might have something might happen which might completely piss you off. Now what happened? If you were you, then why is there so much of change? Now this brings us to this central question. When we talk about who am I, we need to understand that the body is not who we are, the mind is not also who we are, but we are experiencing everything which is happening in the outer and the inner world. So can it be safely told that we are the awareness who is experiencing all this? Let me give you an example to better understand this. Now let's say that you are having a nice time and you're relaxing in your lawn and you're watching your dog play. Now when you're watching your dog play, a part of your attention, or I would say your complete attention is occupied by your dog playing, right? You're just observing your dog and you're feeling good. All your consciousness is occupied in looking at the activities of your dog. Now let's say suddenly someone told you that there's a rattlesnake behind you or in the same lawn. Do you think the same level of focus, the same level of attention will still be there on the dog? Certainly not. Now a part of your objective attention will be occupied by that fear, will be occupied by the emotion of fear. And because of that, the consciousness which was occupied by the vision of the dog now has something else to give attention to. This is what happens when we talk about consciousness as a snapshot. Now let's say you enter a room. You enter a room and take a glance. You take a glance just with the intent of just taking a glance. And there was effortless ease in that. At that point of time, you were not thinking about what is there at what point of time. You just had a glance. And now if I ask you, start looking at the different objects in that room and start creating images or analyzing those objects. Now the same effortless ease suddenly translates into effort. The root point I'm trying to drive through these examples is this, that what you're interpreting, what you are analyzing, that is not you. Now let's take another example, which Michael has also mentioned in his book. Let's say you have a room, and in the room you have a couple of folks and also a large piano. Now just think that the piano doesn't exist there and there are only 4 people. If I ask you to think in that way, then you might say, of course I can just ignore the piano and just focus on those 4 people there. Now what if I told you, ignore those 4 people and just focus on the piano? You probably would say, yeah, maybe I can lie to myself and say those people don't exist and there's only the piano. Now, during both the situations, the consciousness is still there. Now, can you think of a situation when none of this can happen? Now, can I ask you to think that you are not there? Is it possible? Now, you might say, how can I think that I am not there? I mean, this might seem confusing and all mumbo jumbo, but if you carefully observe what I am pointing towards, you will understand the gist of it. The only way or the only time you're not there is when you're not aware, when you're not conscious. The only time you will not be there is when you're not there, right? So that means that whatever is happening, the root cause of who are you is that witnessing consciousness, that awareness. If that awareness is not there, then those objects, whether they are there or not, is irrelevant because you yourself are not there. So what this means is the witnessing, the awareness, which is witnessing this ever-changing world, is who we are. Thoughts can be very pleasant. Have you not experienced a situation in your life where you are peaceful, when you are absolutely don't have a lot of thoughts and you are at ease with yourself? If we are our mind, then obviously we would need some thoughts to survive. You can survive without thoughts. This is what the state is trying to tell us. Even when you don't have a lot of mental activity, you still can survive. The reason this point is very important, crucial to understand, is because a lot of people are identified heavily through their minds. Their mind constantly evaluates, judges, and tries to create a story and hypothesis, a narrative. And our world is constantly revolving around that narrative. But once you realize that this mind is just like a naughty child, it becomes happy, it becomes sad, but I am not this fluctuating monkey. I am not this monkey. I am the person who's watching this monkey. Once you realize this, once you just realize this, you take back, you reclaim your power. You reclaim the power which is there within each one of us. But the only problem is we feel that thoughts are mandatory to exist. Thoughts are important to exist. Obviously, thoughts are important to function in day-to-day life. But the problem comes where thoughts become compulsive. Where there is not a need to think, but still we go on thinking. And we don't know how to stop it. Thoughts can become extremely noisy and counterproductive. But once you realize that these thoughts are subject to change and you are not the thoughts, you are just the one who's witnessing both the internal and the outer reality. Experiences are going to change, they are bound to change, they are meant to change. Change is the only constant. I know most of you would have heard this countless times. But the point is, once you understand, once you genuinely answer this question of who am I, that is when consciousness begins to blossom. And Michael talks about this in this chapter where he says that consciousness is the highest word you can ever utter. God itself, like if you talk about divinity, God itself is consciousness. And once you realize that you are this awareness, this ever-witnessing presence, thoughts start losing relevance to you. The chaotic and the neurosis suddenly falls apart. And this is what Ramana Maharishi was hinting towards. Not just give a very simple answer, but stay with that question without answering it. Experience the question without trying to answer that question. If you are able to really understand what I'm saying, you would have noticed a subtle shift within you as you view my content. Because what I'm talking about is consciousness. What is listening to this video is consciousness. So consciousness is expressing in different ways through different mediums. I hope you liked my today's video. We are about to finish the first segment of this book, which is called Awakening Consciousness. We have another video on this Awakening Consciousness segment, and then we move to the next segment of this book where we'll talk about the different dimensions which Michael is talking about in this book, The Untethered Soul. If you really loved the video, do share it with people who think and benefit from this content. Also subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much, and I'll meet you in the next video. Bye.